boy. So today we're going to be working with Sage, getting him used to tonal response and vibrations, so that way he can also be recalled and practice leave it without a leash on. Okay, we've done some conditioning already with him recognizing the tone and coming back. Haven't tried the vibrate yet. We're just going to go out in the real world to see how he does when he triggers this device that's pressure sensitive, when he pulls, how he does with the real world distractions. Something like this works out really well because of all the preconditioning and training that we've done before. The objective is still the same, right? Just having it so he's on a nice and loose leash, but then when there is that pressure, it helps trigger, good boy, either a beep or a vibrate depending on how hard that pressure is, to help him to refocus back onto us. You know, 'cause we've taught him that if he comes back, then that sound stops and he gets a reward. Good boy. And just make it as easy for him as possible right now. Can use natural boundaries like good boy, the road there. He triggers the pressure, comes back, good boy. For the most part, he's still walking really nicely on a loose leash, which works really well for something like this because when there's no tension, nothing happens, right? Gets to kind of just walk freely. He gets to smell, he gets to explore, all that good stuff. It only triggers when there is pressure, when maybe he gets excited or suddenly starts pulling towards a pup or something. And that in conjunction with the leash training before and redirecting his focus back to us, changing directions and all those things will make it much easier for a handler to work with him when he gets distracted. One of the hardest things for a lot of people when they're training is doing something consistently, right? As soon as that pressure hits, they either have to redirect or jerk on the lead or call their name. You know, they have to just do something, right? As opposed to allowing that pressure to go and build and for the dog to kind of condition themselves to work through that pressure to get to whatever they're interested in. Good boy. And he's doing really well so far. Just responding off of the slightest leash pressure and redirecting his focus back so it doesn't even trigger. Just going to practice around the neighborhood first with mild distractions, and then we're going to work on the dog park again with some recall and longer range. Come on, bud. I don't know what he's eating. Come here. Good boy. It's a hazard sometimes in the fall when there's a lot of leaves blocking things or people are keeping their yards short. Looks like there's nothing there, but definitely finding something to get into. You just got to be careful of that. And that's also where being able to trigger devices like this even manually to help him to leave it when you don't have a leash on him from a distance can really help. I'm making sure not to force any additional pressure on my end. If I need his attention, I'll use his name I want him mostly to be the one to trigger the actions by pulling through the leash pressure. So here, for example, if we want him to kind of get going off of that smell. Sage, good boy. Just use his name instead of pulling on the lead. Doing every pup back to back to help showcase how much of the prerequisite work can really help in an exercise like this beforehand. You can see because Sage here had a lot more time, good boy, in practicing maintaining and refocusing and not pulling on the lead in the first place, that he's hardly triggering it at all, as opposed to poor Marlowe, which was very distracted and wanted to play with the flying leaves and things like that. He's also not nearly as sensitive to the tone or the vibrate, which is fine, but at least he stopped pulling and came back in. And every pup is going to be different. That's why it's going to be important to run a good evaluation and set levels accordingly. You always want to start them off on the lowest things and get them conditioned to that, as opposed to always ramping things up if necessary. Boy. Yes, good boy. I feel like, unfortunately for Mr. Hudson here, he might not be ready for this yet, but because we're doing this back to back, good boy. Yeah. Just to see how far along they are. He's only had maybe a couple days worth of practice with not pulling on the leash, but he's doing really well, so it'll be interesting to see how he responds too. And that also helps me to adjust the training as necessary, because when it comes to something like this where we want the ability, good boy, to redirect him from a distance and be more sensitive to the least amount of pressure possible, he's kind of got an unfortunate head start in the wrong direction, just because he's so used to, good boy, he's so used to pulling now on a device like the prong collar that exerts even more pressure. So if he's desensitized himself a little bit, even getting used to it and pulling through it, then we have to do a lot more reconditioning to get him used to soft pressure. But he's been doing really well so far. Good boy. Eventually we want to get it to the point where if he even notices that we're turning, right, or going in a different direction, or he's overshooting like Sage here, can recognize that and adjust accordingly to follow us before any leash pressure even appears. And he's been doing really well with that, just through the fact that he loves engagement, he loves to play. So it's on that front, at least in his favor, that it's very easy for him to engage with the handler. But that also requires that the handler, wants to play and run around and do all of those things, which most of the time families just out on walks, especially nowadays, seem to just be want to be more disconnected and just kind of go for the walk just to get around the neighborhood and come back, which is fine. Everybody is going to have their own relationship with their own pup, And a lot of people are really busy nowadays with work and everything, so they don't have as much time as, even a lot of people would like to have with their dog. And so it's one of those things where luxury is a time and resource. We have to try to take that into consideration and management too while training. Good boy. Good job. You did really good though. I think we definitely got around the same block a lot faster with him, and it triggered a lot less. Good boy. Come on, Sage. He's also less sensitive. There we go. Good boy. A lot less sensitive to it. Wait. Good boy.